COVID continues to surge, and while the weekly vaccination rate in the U.S. is actually going up right now, partly because of more awareness of the risks of not getting vaccinated, many people in our nation are still hearing ominous and vague vaccine shade like this.
There's still an awful lot we don't know. These are, after all, experimental drugs, and they're behaving like it.
Fauci's act is wearing thin, and we see time and again that it was he and his like-minded experts who were routinely acting against basic scientific norms.
Fauci pretended to know what he does not know and could not know.
So you have top right-wing voices hitting that kind of note. Now, the story is not all monolithic. Some on Fox News have accurately reported to and referred to the science. Some Republican officials are backing up the CDC and being responsible and putting partisanship aside. So there is that going on. And, you know, many people called on Donald Trump to tell his followers to get vaccinated. And this past weekend, he did.
You know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. Bree, you got to do what you have to do. But I recommend take the vaccines. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccines.
So that was one push, take the vaccines. Now, we can note that some of Trump's own MAGA supporters booed him for that. But let's be clear. People call on Donald Trump to do something. He did it. And there are people who listen to him, just like people listen to all sorts of different leaders. So he said, get vaccinated. If you're watching and that appeals to you, you should know. That's what he said. Then there are the Republican governors from Arizona to Florida that continue to attack the common sense safety measures and battle with scientists and really take a different tack than what you just saw from Trump. We're also seeing lagging vaccine rates in red states that are battered with cases. So the larger dynamic here is actually also important to consider. We talk a lot about COVID in the last 2 years, but there's a longer running Republican war on science, from climate change to deriding all sorts of independent experts to siding with industry over universities to the Republican senator who infamously tried his own hand at amateur climate snow analysis.
We keep hearing that 2014 has been the warmest year on record. I asked the chair, you know what this is? It's a snowball. And that's just from outside here. So it's very, very cold out.
See, he's got a snowball because it's cold out. And sometimes, well, the fact checks, they do it for themselves. It can get worse than that, too. At a 2011 presidential debate, so again, long before Trump and COVID and all this, one of the then big faces of the Republican Party, Texas Governor Rick Perry, well, he had a different argument to go after climate science.
The science is not settled on this. Just because you have a group of scientists that have stood up and said, here is the fact, Galileo got outvoted for a spell.
Perry seeming to go after Galileo, who was punished 4 centuries ago for saying the earth revolved around the sun, deemed a heretic by the Catholic Church, if you want to get into it. Now, in 1992, the Catholic Church actually formally apologized to Galileo. 20 years later, Rick Perry's still struggling with that one. Now, there's a political analyst we rely on around here. You may remember him from his beat appearances, Chayco Manduri. And he makes the case that the methods the Republican Party employed in denying climate change are now being rebooted by the anti-vax movement, which hops on any uncertainty that may exist in science to claim certainty in opposing science. Now, that's a nuanced but important point, especially if you're having these debates with people who may listen to some of what I just played you from Fox News. So Komanduri actually dates this as far back as the 1980 Reagan campaign, where he said there were great flaws in the theory of evolution, pushing for a biblical story of creation, and actually making policy out of it, arguing that should give it equal weight, that should get equal weight in our public schools, which are government funded.